Hey again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. It's cold outside today, so I've tucked away in a quiet corner of the house to talk about propagating roses from a bouquet, those cut stem flowers that you find in a bouquet. Now, this is not the can I do it or how to do it video. I've already made that video. I'll post it up here. I'll link it in the top right hand corner of your screen. So if you want to go straight through to there to see how it differs from regular rose propagation, that's the video for you. This is more the video of should I do it? Is it my best option? Are there better ways, or what are the advantages and disadvantages? So I'll go through that here. If you are from Australia, stick around for at least the first point of this video here. It's important that you know that before you proceed on to making your cuttings. So my first point comes down to something I didn't know when I made that last video. In the comments of the video, Alex Wong commented and said that they'd heard that roses had been pre-treated, or were usually pre-treated with something to stop it from rooting. And I was along the lines of reassuring him that that wasn't the case, or maybe it was just a side effect of a treatment to elongate the stems that made it hard to root. But then I got a clarifying comment from another user. I've included the exchange here, but what it turns out is that if roses are imported to Australia, then they are devitalized first. Now, devitalized is a funny word. Let me try to use it in a sentence here. Yesterday I was on my way to work. I was backing out from the driveway. I couldn't see it coming. I heard a thump underneath the back tire, and it turns out I devitalized the neighbor's cat. So it is just a bit of scientific euphemism for killed, or rather in the case of roses, that they've been pre-treated with glyphosate to make sure that they will die after their life in your vase. The reason for this is that the Australian authorities don't want the chance that you could introduce foreign pests or diseases from those roses into Australia, so they've mandated that all imported roses are devitalized. Which means, of course, that if you try to take cuttings from them, no matter how much you follow my methods in the other video, no matter how careful you are about the thickness or firmness of the stem, you're not going to have any success that way. If you are looking to do cuttings in Australia, which, you know, it's November now, late November, it's a good time to get cuttings, you'll have to get those cuttings locally. Even if your roses haven't been devitalized at the source, there are other reasons to consider whether bouquet cut roses are the best source for cuttings for your propagation success. And one of those is that the way they are grown, the goal that the growers have when they're growing in, say, a greenhouse in Ecuador, is that they want long, elongated, stretched stems that are fast grown and go to market quickly, and that tends to produce a type of growth that is very soft, very pithy, and sometimes you can have trouble finding on that stem a section that is the right firmness to take a semi-hardwood cutting. So that's the very first reason, is that sometimes it is hard to find a good cutting off of cut roses. Okay, quickly on to reason number 2, is that for most cases when you buy cut roses, you don't know the cultivar. Most suppliers just don't give you that kind of information. That gives you a couple of problems as a person who's trying to propagate. You just don't know if that cultivar is any good in your garden. Is it hardy? Is it disease resistant? Will it make a nice rose in the landscape? So those considerations are very important for somebody who wants to grow roses in their garden. Not so important for the rose supplier. They may have chosen a cultivar that's just really good in a tropical greenhouse and not for your landscape. And that can cause a problem in other ways too. Like if you don't know which rose you're getting, there's no way you can determine whether you have the right to propagate this rose. And for a guy like me, if I'm growing commercially, if I'm trying to sell my roses, certainly I don't want to be trying to sell something that I don't have the right to, but also I have to say there's just about zero commercial value in trying to sell a rose to somebody and you can't tell them the cultivar name. Everybody who buys a rose from me wants to know the cultivar, wants to know its garden characteristics, so there's just about zero value for me to propagate a rose from a bouquet if I'm doing it on a commercial basis. For you, in the home, you'd have to judge how much value you can get out of that. And the third reason, and I almost feel like I don't have to mention this, but if you see a rose that has wild colors, like it's a bright blue or just a vibrant electric green, or it's a rainbow colored rose, very, very likely that these are not the natural colors of the rose, that they have either been dyed or painted by the florist or the supplier. And so, needless to say, if you take cuttings off of that stem, you are not going to have that characteristic passed on to the resulting rose. Now, if you've seen my channel before, you know I'm a rose enthusiast, and you know that I'm an enthusiast for propagation, so I don't want to leave it in a spot where I've just discouraged you from taking cuttings of roses. In fact, the point of this video is to say there are some better sources of roses cuttings that you can take that are more likely to give you better results. And the first of those that I'm going to talk about is actually kind of a cheat, but not really. You could actually go to the garden center in the spring when your roses when the landscape roses they're selling are starting to shoot strongly, and you can buy some landscape roses. And I have to say, the #1 rose propagation video on YouTube done by Mike Kincaid, he does exactly that. He just goes to the garden center. It looks like he just buys some brand new, fresh, strongly growing roses and takes cuttings just about directly off of those. And not that Mike Kincaid needs my props, but he does do a nice job in that video, doing it in a pop bottle rather than my propagation method, which is under timed mist. So that all said, I will say one thing about this method is that you should still pay attention to your right to propagate. So a lot of roses that are on the market are patented varieties. They're still within the plant patent period, and I like to respect breeders' rights. So I want to see that the plant breeder can still make money off of their product. So a lot of the ones in the store are still protected by that. Some of them are not. But once you know the cultivar name, you can go onto the Help Me Find website, find out when it was released and when that plant patent period expires, and that will help you to determine whether you have the legal right to go ahead and propagate those roses. Certainly I'd like to see you do that even if you're a home grower, but certainly if you are a commercial grower like me, absolutely essential that you know you have the right to propagate from it. And maybe your next best way to get material for cuttings is to go online and connect with other rose enthusiasts. So locally especially. So I go through Facebook myself, and I made a little site, or made a little group called Canada Rose Exchange. And on there, I've encouraged members to trade their roses, but also to trade cuttings. And myself, I've met up with probably, a half dozen members now to trade and to take cuttings from their gardens, which serves kind of a double duty here for me. I mean, one, it obviously gives me an access to more roses for my personal collection and for my business, but the other thing is that there's so many people out there who have rare and uncommon varieties of roses. It's kind of my mission in life to keep those roses protected by propagating them and distributing them. So it's fantastic if you can find this. It's a great way to enter into the hobby, to meet other rose growers, to get their experience, but also to get some uncommon varieties that you can't find in the store. Now, if you're not so much into the online thing, some people are skeptical or kind of suspicious of Facebook connections and that kind of thing, that's fine. You can still do this stuff in person. If you go to your local garden club, you go to your local rose society, or even public gardens, I'm hoping with permission, but many gardeners are very happy to share their hobbies this way. And if you hit them after their first flush of blooms, they're probably going to be trimming back and deadheading anyway, so there's no harm to them in giving away some of that semi-hardwood wood that you can use for propagating and trying your hand at propagating roses. So fantastic way to go for it. And finally, I'm just going to mention, and I'm not even going to go into detail, a shout out to the rose rustlers, and you can Google that one on your own, but that's another way you can consider getting yourself some cuttings of roses. All right, that's it from me on this topic. I hope I've given you some food for thought on whether taking cuttings from bouquets is your most productive way of getting roses, the most beneficial to you. I want to give a shout out to those users who did leave comments on my last video and on all my videos, really. It's so encouraging, but also sometimes enlightening. I was completely ignorant of the facts in Australia before that was pointed out to me. So I'm happy to learn that and pass that on to you. So thank you so much for your comments. And if you have any comments on this video, please leave those below.